Okay, the time is 3 p.m. and I will call the for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Did something happen with the speaker?
I think the microphone just briefly cut out there. Not on our end. It was out of our control.
Okay, we'll try that. Yeah, there is a bit of an echo too. Oh well. All right, so with that, I will ask for approval of the minutes of September 13th, 2022. Councillor Macon.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes from the September 13th, 2022 regular council meeting as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just will acknowledge that Councillor Abatoye is with us virtually, just so that everybody knows she is with us. So are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing or hearing any, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. There are no delegations that have pre-registered for this evening, so we will get right on to our presentation. We have the Fire Services Master Plan Overview, so I would invite Chief Todd Martins and Isaac Commandant and Jeff Carlsless from Bear Integrated Solutions, and Jeff is joining us virtually, so if you'd like to come up to the presentation area. And we do have 15 minutes. Okay, just before you begin, I'm just going to see, does anybody actually have their computers on that are watching this in the room that's causing the back noise? Okay, doesn't sound like it. I just thought that might be one of the areas. So welcome, Chief. I will have you introduce everybody and you will have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, members of council. Todd Martins, Fire Chief with the city. Here today with me to my right is Isaac Commandante, Dale McLean, and joining us virtually is Jeff Carlisle. They're here from Bear Integrated Solutions and to do our overview of our Fire Services Master Plan. We'll take any questions after and turn it over to Isaac. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Appreciate you having us here to do our presentation on Fire Master Plan Overview. And to my right, again, I'd like to introduce Dale McLean and virtually Jeff Carlisle. So we acknowledge that we only have 15 minutes for the presentation, so we'll be very worried about that. So we'll get started. So the Fire Master Plan is it's going to be in a time span of 10 years, and hopefully this thing works. Okay, first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce the team once again. And the team profile, we're based in Calgary. We've been doing this now for the last 20 years, and we've got over 450 years of combined proven frontline leadership and consultation experience. And we've done many of these projects across the country of similar nature, along with fire master plans, and you'll see some of our projects identified here in future slides. So some of the people that aren't with us today is Rich Hildebrand, who's going to be part of our technical content, and he's going to be looking after our performance analysis. Kevin Jess, who is the previous fire commissioner, he's going to be looking after our technical content, and he's part of the stakeholder engagement as well. Brian Murphy, who is our technical content, looking after our GIS, and our analyst, Alana Burton. So the purpose of the project, as we understand it, is to look at an in-depth review of the fire services as we know today, and look at developing a fire services master plan, looking at a 10-year time span. Part of the fire master plan, of course, is to look at the risks involved, because as we know, the reason why we have fire services is to mitigate the risks that we have in our communities. And we want to highlight opportunities for improved service delivery. And then we'll determine optimum service delivery model, keeping in mind that we have competing interests in the city, and making sure that our recommendations and our observations meet with those competing interests, including budgets. Our project objectives address the needs and circumstances based on the municipal goals, fiscal realities, and competing demands. Identify and assess the nature and hazards and sources of risks. Provide evidence-based recommendations on how to address and identify the gaps. And evaluate community growth and anticipated fire service needs. Our scope of work. Review existing means of delivering services, including an investigation of strengths, opportunities, and budgets, human resources, and delivery protocols. Consult with the fire services to understand on how the fire service and emergency services response services are delivered. Consult with stakeholders, which we've already done. Identify needs and opportunities and concerns with a view to requirements for streamlined and effective services. One of the biggest things that we look at is the considerations for growth in the populations and the activities in the community, including residential as well as commercial. And in your community in particular will be the industrial portion as well. Review all areas, including staffing, station location, vehicles, and apparatus. Vehicle, apparatus maintenance. So essentially, we're going to be looking at everything that's involved in running a fire service. And in particular, your department, because it is a full-time fire service as well as being a union department. So we're also going to include recommendations and observations and approximate financial implications. And then, of course, with the 10-year master plan, we'll be applying implementation plans with those recommendations. Before I go into project approach, is there any questions, or do you want to leave those to the very end?
Just go right to the end.
Okay. So our project approach. So the first thing that I want to identify is that we're not going to collect data, information, and go away and create a fire master plan. We want to make sure that we're collaborating with the chief, the director, as well as others in the community to make sure that we're setting the community up for success. Evaluate community risks, and then we're going to conduct intense research, stakeholder engagements, and again, which we've already done. The only one that we have left to do an interview with is the fire chief himself. Keeping in mind that we've been in communication with him already since the inception of the project. Conduct detailed analysis using a 5-year response performance data. We know that there have been other reports that have been done over the last couple of years regarding performance data. We are going to be looking at those as well. Conduct community comparative analysis. So we are going to be looking at other communities of like size and of like services and doing a community comparative and doing a benchmark analysis. Provide fiscally responsible and sustainable. And again, our recommendations are going to be evidence-based. So we want to make sure that we have all the data that we can find, as well as all the 5-year response data, to make sure that we have evidence-based recommendations.
I wonder if I could just elaborate a little bit on that, understanding the 15 minutes. Can you hear me, Your Worship?
Can you turn your mic up a little bit or bring it a little bit closer? You're a little bit hard to hear.
Does that help any?
A little bit better.
Okay, so with respect to evidence-based recommendations, I'd like to point out that in the fire service, the service levels will be based on risk. And to the extent possible, we will use evidence-based based on leading practices, provincial legislation, those kind of applicable standards. But at some point, there will be some subjectivity applied. And in those cases, we'll identify that this is a risk tolerance recommendation, and certainly council will have the opportunity to provide input in that regard. The second part of this is we will provide options that council can look at and review, and once we have established the themes of the report, we can come back and say, here's where things are looking, and council have engagement in that process and looking at our recommendations. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly articulated, that those particular factors, that council will be involved. There is some subjectivity in the evaluation.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. So when we do these fire service reviews and fire service master plans, there's a number of considerations that are listed here. One of the biggest ones that are top of mind is growth, economy, and demographics and community profile. Then we look at the development and in area structure plans. And then we look at the buildings and structures concentrating on high risks, utilities, industrial activities, and including any airports that you have in the vicinity, local government legislation and bylaws, financial resources and constraints, multi-jurisdictional requirements and cooperations. That includes your mutual aid agreements and emergency management plans. This department-specific considerations, we look at the geographical boundaries of response, current budgets, financial implications and financial profile, core services and standards, fire prevention, public education, fire station locations, apparatus and equipment inventory and future needs, and this includes all loose equipment that apply to any of your core services. Human resources, anything from recruiting to training to incumbent training, all the way to qualifications, health, wellness, staffing levels, leadership management, and of course how you promote people. Technology, records management, and data management. As you can see, anything, as I mentioned to you before, anything that means or that implies how you operate your fire service, we're going to have a look at. That was double. So again, the process, the first things that we do, and we've already done this, we did targeted interviews with a number of you. Online firefighter survey. We wanted to make sure that the firefighters had their input as far as the fire master plan was concerned. We didn't want to leave anybody out. And then we do the community comparative analysis. The gap analysis. During our interviews, we did a SWOT analysis. We looked at strengths. We asked the interviewees strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. We give the participants the opportunity to comment on the fire department services. Whenever possible, issues identified, what's working, what's not working. And then, as Jeff said, we look at industry leading practices and then information from our comparative analysis. So here's where we are to date. We do a 5-phase approach to doing our fire services master plan. We've completed phase 1, which we've done the fire department orientation, community tour, and the environmental scan. We've completed phase 2, stakeholder engagements. We did the interviews, online survey, and we've done the comparative analysis, background research, and the data collection. We are halfway into our phase 3, which we're doing our community risk assessment, department benchmarking, and the performance analysis. And that'll be done by October 30th. And then phase 4, develop the actual fire services master plan, which if everything works well with our data research and our comparative analysis and our benchmarking, will be done that by November 25th. And then phase 5, the completion of the fire services master plan, and hopefully presenting before Christmas. And our target date for that is December 16th. So, Your Worship, that concludes my presentation, and we invite anyone with any questions. And
Okay, so unfortunately you weren't able to come to our committee of the whole, which provides for more open dialogue. So for this item only through our agenda, I will treat this one as though it's like a committee of the whole presentation. You may ask clarifying questions. You may provide some feedback, but let's all try and be concise, okay? So that everybody has an opportunity to ask questions or provide some feedback on this. So I will ask for that. Councillor Macon, you're first.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for your presentation today. Just a couple questions, I think. No matter how you look at it, fire services is very expensive. Infrastructure, assets, human resources, wherever we go with the master plan. So my question is, when you bring back recommendations and the financial impacts of those, do you bring municipalities a variety of options that consider different budget thresholds?
I'll answer it first, and then I'll ask Jeff to answer it second. And as he mentioned earlier, we do provide options. At some point when we look at some of these recommendations, there may only be one option, and some of those options may be, if we have a recommendation that spans out to between the 5 and 10 year mark, you may look at it and you say, well, we can't afford that, and maybe we'll table it for the next time you update your fire master plan. And one of the biggest recommendations that we make is that you have a look at this fire master plan on an annual basis, depending on how fast your community is growing or things that are changing within your community. So, Jeff, do you want to add something to that?
All I can add to that is, one of the things that we strive to provide is enough data and information for council to develop a response policy or a service delivery target, and that will provide triggers when additional resources or different expenditures have to be or need to be reviewed by the fire chief and presented. That would form part of the normal budget process. But with the performance targets identified and a complete communication process that council gets the information on how they're achieving these targets, it puts the any expansion or any further development of the fire service puts the onus on the council to look at the data the fire chief presents, and what options are is maybe just not adding more people. There may be some innovative approaches. So that's the best I can do to add to that particular question.
Thank you very much. And then my second question is, so for the engagement with the firefighters directly, was that optional, and did you get good uptake on that?
As far as the online survey, we did get 70%.
Sorry, did you say 70?
70% feedback, and yes, it was optional.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I've put myself in second for speaking order. So just to go on that question, the firefighter survey, was that also offered to the paid on call, or was it only offered to the full-time?
Your Worship, it was offered to everybody.
Okay, and you got 70%, 70.
I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you. So the second question that I have is you talk about you're going to review the industry as well. And I guess the question that I have is industry is self-sufficient. They have their own firefighting equipment. They actually have better equipment than we have. So why would that be included in here?
Well, we have to make, through your worship, we want to make sure we identify all the risks in your community. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to make a recommendation that the fire service is going to respond to that particular facility. We just want to make sure that we identify all the risks. And that includes any plume dispersions within the community, any movement or any kind of unusual movement within the community because of that industry. So we're not implying that the response is going there. We just want to make sure that we identify those risks.
Okay, thanks. So my last question that I have is you indicated you have, 450 years of experience?
I certainly don't.
Well, no, but your team. So I guess the question that I have on that, so with that much experience, would you already not know if the model that we're utilizing is the correct model or not? Like for a municipality our size?
We wouldn't. I don't think we'd like to make those assumptions right now. We want to make sure that we identify and analyze all the data first before we do that.
I'll let you off on that one. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you, gentlemen. Nice to see you. I just want to touch on the 70% response rate. When we're dealing with a specific city department that is emergency related, 70% response rate for something this significant seems abysmally low. What's the standard response rate and why is it so low, by the way?
Through your worship, 70% is actually pretty good when it comes down to doing our surveys. We've had surveys as low as 45%, and our average is about 55% as far as your surveys are concerned. And you know, I got to tell you, when we did our surveys, we did them over the summertime, and some were maybe on vacation, some were, I mean, I don't know what the situation was, but we think that 70% is pretty good.
And I thank you. I still stand by my comment. We get a better response rate when we ask for staff engagement on how they find their work experience in the city as a whole. And of course, most of those people aren't first responders. So I think 70% is low. I would anticipate 100%. I really would. And I'd like to know why. I have a better detail or understanding as to why the rate is 70%. But I'll leave that alone. I don't need to beat it up anymore. You mentioned in your presentation interviews, but I think you said you only scheduled one interview. Is that what I heard?
No, we have one left.
How many interviews did you do?
It was 2 days of interviews. These are face-to-face interviews, and I believe there was 10.
And who did you interview approximately, without names?
Dale?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Kelly, we've done the CAO, the director, a couple of directors. The fire chief is scheduled to be the district chief or the deputy chief, sorry, and then we're getting into the firefighters there through the survey.
2 or 3 of
we also interviewed your planning and economic development managers and your fleet and facilities managers as part of 2 days of interviews.
Okay, thank you. Is there a reason why you wouldn't have face-to-face interviews with all of the firefighting team, or at least 70% of them?
Through your worship, the reason why we don't do all the firefighters, because we simply don't have the budgetary resources or the time to get them done. And this is the best way we can do it, making sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Ketcher, I've got follow-up questions. Come back to me, please.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your presentation today. My question has to do with a comparative analysis of similar sized communities. I think it could be quite difficult to find a community that's exactly the same as Fort Saskatchewan or any other community that you do this type of master plan for. But currently we're in Fort Saskatchewan Planning and Development Department, and we're having significant conversation about this as well, is undergoing a change of land use bylaw. And I think they've given us quite a bit of detail about what the direction of the design of new neighborhoods is going to be, which is going to incorporate different type densities and housing products. And I think I have a good understanding of what the model that they want to go to for future neighborhoods is going to look like. Have you considered like the intended outcome of our new land use bylaw in this fire master plan?
Jeff, I'll let you answer that one.
Could be a little bit too forward looking and potentially.
Yeah. I don't have the interview notes in front of me, but we did understand that you've just gone through a land use change in how you're going to develop your neighborhoods, which I think was, if I remember something, that anybody in a new neighborhood would walk 15 minutes and be able to reach the amenities or the services that they need. And it was the philosophy was to make Fort Saskatchewan a very attractive city to live in and to work in, understanding that there's a good percentage of your workforce that lives outside of the city. So that's what I recall from that interview. I can certainly get a little more detail from the interview notes, and I found it quite interesting, the particular approach that you're taking on your official community plan and your land use development.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer, and it's good to know that you're abreast of where we're going with that direction and the potential impact that it could have on fire services delivery. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Blizzard.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Lots of good information. Just a couple little questions. Do you also look at the training that firefighters and the volunteers get, whether it's adequate, or is that not part of this?
Through your worship, yes, as a matter of fact, we do. We look at it right from the very beginning because that's really the onset of a firefighter's career. We want to make sure that they're being trained to the core services that are being offered to the community. So if they're doing, say, vehicle extrication, we want to make sure that they're properly trained in vehicle extrication.
Okay, and one more. Do you also look at the roles that full-time and volunteers have? Because they're different. You know, one's working full-time and maybe does regular checks, but the volunteers also have different jobs. Their training, I'm sure you're looking at that. But do you look at the roles when they go to a fire? Who does what? Is that part of this? Make sure they can work together and work together efficiently, maybe happily.
Your mic.
Going on, is it? Yep.
Now,
Your worship, through to Councillor Blizzard. Yes, no matter if they're a career full-time firefighter or a volunteer firefighter, they all have the same qualifications they need to be able to perform. The training needs to be at that level so that they can safely and effectively deliver whatever service we're expecting, the city is expecting them to deliver, no matter if they're paid on call or career. So, and they do have specific responsibilities through training and SOGs and SOPs, policies and procedures that they are expected to follow. And so, yes, I don't know if that answered your question, but.
I guess it does. I guess my concern there would be, you know, a full-time person there, and when the volunteers come, are they respected that even though they're volunteers, they are still knowledgeable enough, I guess, would be, you know, that they're integrated when they arrive and can effectively do the work needed.
Jeff, did you want to add something to what Dale said regarding the roles and responsibilities?
We take a holistic review of your human resource component and look at roles and responsibilities, just as Dale was saying, and we compare that we have our community comparisons that we do. We have what, our industry-leading practices. So we'll leave no stone unturned in that regard, and also we'll take a look at the relationship between the full-time and the paid on call, and see how that's working. If there's opportunities to improve that. Typically, there is a little bit of friction between the paid on call and the full time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true in Fort Saskatchewan, but what I wanted you to come away with is that we will take a deep dive on all these aspects from the organizational structure and the roles and responsibilities of the various members.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm just before you, Councillor Kelly. So when you talk about organizational structure, so do you leave it at the fire chief this way, or do you also look at the structure reporting upwards to leadership team to city manager? Does it go both ways?
I'll let Jeff answer that.
Certainly we would. It's not something that we would necessarily make a recommendation unless there was something that we looked at that was not necessarily working efficiently and effectively. Your organizational structure you have right now is typical in terms of there's a protective and community services manager that the fire chiefs report to. You have a senior leadership team headed up by the CAO. If there was some information or factor that was causing challenges in that regard, we would certainly make a recommendation in that regard.
Okay, and then my last question will be, so through the interviews, through a lot of the other processes that we do, was there any thought of interviewing council at all to see where we were with anything, or is that just totally irrelevant?
Your Worship, when we interviewed your CAO, he asked us to be sure that you were engaged in the process, and that at midpoint, and that's what I was indicating, that when we have our themes and where the report appears to go, and we have developed some of the preliminary options, we will come back and communicate that with you and ask for your feedback and any challenges or concerns that you see. So very much as you see today, we're providing you with an opportunity, or I should say it the other way around. You're giving us the opportunity to present the scope to you, and then later on, midpoint or whenever we feel comfortable, we'll work with the CAO and come back and say, here's where we are. And I'm sure as it goes along outside of those formal presentations that the fire chief will provide information towards the senior leadership team that council can obtain through the CAO's weekly and monthly updates.
Okay, so the short answer to my question was no. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. I was pleased to note in your study considerations that you included a line on fire prevention and public communication or education. It's long been my opinion that if we value, and the reason we have a fire department is to protect lives and protect property, and probably in that order, and that the most efficient way to do that and most effective way over the long term is public education and public communication. I look forward to your detailed response and recommendations in that area. And there's a strong hint there if you caught it. It seems to me that the biggest bang for the buck, by probably orders of magnitude, are those two line items, education and communication. So I look forward to your suggestions and recommendations in that area. Thank you.
Okay, that looks like all of the questions that council has. Ms. Cowie, you were on there briefly. Was that just an accident? Okay, all right. So thank you very much for your presentation here today. We look forward to hearing the results and being informed, and also looking to be engaged in what's happening. So thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
And you are not required to stay for the entire meeting. You are welcome to leave. I know it always gets awkward for people. So thank you. So the next item we have is Affordable Housing Incentive Program. General Manager John Dance presenting.
Good evening or good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. My name is John Dance, General Manager of Corporate Services. I'm here to present on the Affordable Housing Incentive Programs. At the June 14th Council meeting, Heartland Housing presented to Council on the Muriel Court Affordable Housing Project status, as well as a request for Council to consider municipal tax concessions. The tax concessions would allow Heartland Housing to offer deeper subsidies to tenants. Also at the June 14th meeting, Council directed administration to return to Council and provide options and impacts for affordable and non-market housing incentive programs. The Council report before you details 3 known options in place for subsidization of affordable housing, including property tax exemptions, mill rate subsidizing, and a grants-based approach. Municipal tax exemptions are possible within the Municipal Government Act. However, consensus amongst others looking at affordable housing incentives is a grants-based approach as a preferred alternative to help offset property taxes and other operating costs for affordable housing projects. The report that you have includes a recommended approach if municipal intervention is desired by Council through an application-based grants model and details rationale behind the recommended grants approach that includes more financial predictability for the city and the city's ability to cap the cost impacts, the reduction of fiscal complications from a tax exemptions program, and the city remains the arbitrator whether the property qualifies. The grants-based approach can go beyond property tax relief. The grants-based approach can also respond to emerging housing needs and also respond to any possible Government of Alberta possible changes for affordable housing incentives, similar to what seniors' lodges or properties owned by the Government of Alberta through the Alberta Social Housing. The city also has the option to integrate affordable housing into an existing community grants policy framework and budget process for a more manageable administration as well as transparency through the budget. Attachment B within your package details the changes to the current grants to organizations policy to include affordable housing. The policy changes include specific funding conditions, criteria, and proof for affordable housing applications. From an impact perspective, this would be a service level increase to the community grants program to include affordable housing providers. The projected financial impact of the possible grant for Muriel Court for the 2023 budget would be approximately $68,000 if full municipal property tax coverage was requested through the grant application and budget approval was given. Other qualifying affordable housing providers who meet policy criteria, if adopted, and are approved through the annual budget process could result in further additional funds required for the community grants program. The motion recommended within the report reflects amendment of the existing community grants policy and processes to include affordable housing. I am available to respond to any questions. We also have Nancy and Adrian in the audience if required.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly and then myself. Questions? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor Katcher, I wonder if Nancy would like to add any comments to this presentation and if she's prepared to.
At this point in time, I mean, that would be out of order. She could have done a delegation at the beginning. You know, we really try and stick to questions of administration. So I would rule no, not at this point in time.
All right, thank you. I support it, and I don't have any questions. Let's get on with the vote. And when it comes time, Mayor Catcher, I'd prefer to make the motion. Thank you.
Okay. And I do have a couple questions. So within the policy, so first of all, it said bring back some options by the end of September. So I kind of expected this would have come to committee of the whole so that we could have had a more wholesome discussion on it. But I guess the question that I have on the affordable housing component part of it, so through the grant application, would it be giving a grant or a waiver for only that portion that are under the affordable housing? Because there's a component that's market as well. So is there a differential on how they would receive grant funding, or if they were eligible?
Through your worship, through the amendments to the policy that were within Appendix B, it details how they would apply for affordable housing and just the very specific conditions and criteria that needed to be met to make the application. Council then makes that decision. The amount of money that is provided to an administration would also make that recommendation to council.
So I guess the question that I have on that, and so if we're developing a policy for it and they come forward and make a request, then how is council going to make a decision? Because we don't have a policy. It's based on we feel good today or we don't feel good today on how much they're going to get. Like, I guess my question really comes down to, shouldn't there have been criteria? If only 20% of your housing authority is affordable housing, why should you receive 100% potentially of a grant for waiver of taxes?
Through your worship, that is actually how the application process is detailed in the funding conditions for affordable housing. So it's based on number of units, it's based on the level of subsidies provided. So it's based on a number of different things. So the criteria simply wouldn't be that 100% subsidy is given if based on a percentage of the units. So it's going to be based on a number of different factors that a recommendation would come forward to you.
Okay, because I was struggling with reading that, and I think the biggest thing is I was thinking it was going to come to a committee of the whole, not specifically for a motion this evening. So, okay, so just for clarity then, so it would come through an application process and it would only be based on the percentage of affordable units.
Correct, Your Worship. Condition 5.1 provides the details of that, so very specifically in terms of subsidized below market housing criteria has been met for the required units through the funding period, and assessment of the application would be based on level of subsidies offered reflective of a number of different categories.
Yeah, I read that, but it doesn't really clearly, for me, it doesn't clearly state that.
Yeah, it's very specific, in fact, for that very purpose.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question on a risk analysis about the service level increase. If this motion is passed tonight, do we know what that's going to look like from a budgetary standpoint for for being able to administer this grant?
From the grant recipient's perspective, or from administration?
From a city, administrative.
I think through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, I think it would be minimal. We have an existing grants process in place for community grants. This is adding another level, so some additional work, but not a significant amount.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any further questions. So, Councillor Kelly, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I move that Council amend GEN-029-C grants to nonprofit organizations to include affordable housing incentives as detailed in Appendix A.
Okay, I'll accept that motion. You can speak in favor of it.
Thank you. Mayor Catcher, you run these meetings, and it's your prerogative, of course, but we just heard from the fire hall, and we treated that like a committee of the whole meeting, and we could, of course, soften the rules as necessary. That is your call.
Well, point of order on that, Councillor Kelly. So to respond to your comment, the fire hall was registered to speak, and it was the chair's prerogative to allow feedback on that. I could have held it at the exact same standards as we normally do. So I try not to deviate greatly at our meetings. So you may proceed with speaking in favor.
Perfect. Thank you. I've had the pleasure of sitting on the Heartland board now for 5 years. Councillor Abatoye, I think you are now for 3 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years. Thank you. It's become painfully aware, probably across Canada, but for sure within our province, that the provincial government is trying to, I hesitate to use this adjective, but slide some of their financial responsibilities toward regarding affordable housing down to the municipal level. I don't think that trend is short-termed. I think it's a long-term trend. There is a movement within the provincial bodies to dispose of, I think, 10% of their properties. They say they're going to reassign those funds, but at the end of the day, they're probably not increasing the doors if they're removing 10% of their properties. The other problem is that it's one thing it really is, in my mind, also not just a provincial government responsibility, but it is a community responsibility to meet the housing requirements of those in need within the community. I don't think you can just toss the ball and say it's a provincial government problem. It is, but it's not just a provincial government problem. It's also a community problem. This particular grant structure serves a very worthwhile need. I remind Council that Heartland itself is a non-profit organization. The purpose for social housing or housing of the type that's being constructed right now on 99th Avenue is solely to provide rent reduced, rent geared to income type model for the city of Fort Saskatchewan. I believe it's our first only. I stand to be corrected, but I think it is our first only. The intention of housing that is geared toward those that have a bigger economic need is to provide some form of economic assistance. And if in fact the overhead expenses and property taxes are strictly an overhead expense, they occur whether or not the doors are open, the property taxes arise. If those are included or taken away, it's possible, and it helps allow for an organization such as Heartland to provide a bigger slice of assistance to those in need. The grant program isn't going to line somebody's pocket. It is to provide assistance. Furthermore, I think this approach makes sense, the administration's suggested approach, because it does allow for a regular review. It causes a regular review of the organization and its merits and its goals and objectives and its successes or failures. So I think there's some merit to that process as well. I would hope the council sees fit to make the amendment, and I welcome comments from my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are on discussion and debate. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation, John. I have a quick question for you, actually, before I speak on the motion. So just going forward, will this request be treated like the other not-for-profit organizations, like when they come for during budgets, how they have to send their financials and come and do some sort of presentation to council? Would that be required from Heartland?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I don't believe in current years we've had community groups present as part of the community groups. There's the option for them to present, but it's certainly not a requirement.
Okay, I was just thinking about the library. Okay, but it's not a requirement. Okay, thank you. No, I absolutely support this motion. I think it's so important for us to be able to support affordable housing. I saw some really interesting statistics. 11.4% of Albertans, require deeper subsidies, and I think that's what Heartland Housing Foundation is trying to provide here. And the city actually provides subsidy for things like recreation. I think affordable housing is something else that we should be looking at and supporting. As it's been said, it's a not-for-profit organization, and so obviously we're not. It's not going to anyone's pocket. And I'm just looking at the financials. 37% is part of the expenses that goes towards property taxes. So I think that's going to really help relieve some of those expenses for the organization, so that those funds can be used to help more people that need those rent subsidies to be able to, pay for their housing. And I think I said this before on this council, that I got a call from a resident that wanted to get into the housing because they're not sure where they're going to put their families, so it's for people like this that we need to provide these types of subsidies. So 100% support it. I think it's something that we need in our community, and I'd like to say thank you actually to administration for working with Heartland Housing Foundation to make this happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I will support the motion. I just want to make a couple comments. So, because I think it's more of a reminder, when we say we want to help more people, that it's not lining people's pockets, and I think those comments actually go further out to many of the programs and services that the city offer as well, because it's one thing, just to offer affordable housing, but they also need to be able to get around our city. We have the Everyone Plays. There's so many programs, and I think each one of them has value. And I think when we review these as a council, in my opinion, it's not just about looking at one. It's about looking at all of them, that, there is need in our community, and that it's not just about the housing. There's a greater need that if you do the housing, then they need to get to work, then they might want to play, but it's all of these combined. So I'm okay with this. Like I said, I thought the wording was a little bit confusing, but if you figure you've got it straight, then I'm okay with that. So I will support this on that basis. Councillor Kelly on close.
I have nothing further to add. I think we probably have consensus on council. Call the question, please.
Okay, the motion is now closed. As there's no further questions, please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. The next one we have is Municipal Internship Program. Jeremy Eamon presenting.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Jeremy Eamon, City's Chief Financial Officer, and I will be presenting on behalf of Mr. Northey, who was unable to be here today. I'm requesting that Council direct administration to apply to host an 18-month finance officer internship to be funded with a $60,000 grant from the Alberta Community Partnership Municipal Internship Program, and up to $60,000 in one-time funding from the Financial Stabilization and Contingency Reserve. Normally, a request of this type would be presented to Council for decision during the operating budget meetings. However, the due date for application under this program is October 3rd, requiring the timing to be earlier. The Municipal Internship Program of the Alberta Community Partnership Grant assists municipalities in recruiting, training, and retaining recent post-secondary graduates. The program provides finance officer interns with opportunities to develop their knowledge and skills and gain experience needed to pursue a career in municipal finance or other areas of local government. As a host, the city would provide hands-on work experience, coaching, mentoring, and learning opportunities to the finance officer over the course of the 18-month internship. The program is supported by the Municipal Affairs Program team with customized work plan templates, coaching, along with a variety of learning resources and professional development opportunities. In the past, the city has successfully hosted municipal interns under both the finance stream and the planning stream. The most recent finance officer internship ended in the fall of 2017, and 5 years later, the individual has recently returned to work for the city in the Economic Development Department. Financial services would benefit greatly from hosting a finance officer intern. Their support and assistance would help us carry out various functions within our department, such as financial accounting, budgeting, financial analysis, and reporting, as well as helping to advance projects within our department business plan. The ACP grant under the Municipal Internship Program provides $60,000, with $53,000 for compensation and $7,000 directed towards internship-related expenses. The grant is not intended to cover the full cost of the internship over the entire 18-month period. The $60,000 of additional city funding was determined using the city's salary pay grid for an entry-level accounting position, plus the employer's share of employee benefits. As for timelines, following Council's decision, we would complete application for the ACP grant. Host cities are chosen and notified in November, and according to the program guidelines, the internship would start between April 24th and June 5th of next year and would end 18 months later. Successful application of the ACP grant requires Council's commitment to the municipal intern program, evidenced through the passing of a motion. Therefore, administration recommends that Council direct administration to apply to host a finance officer intern for 18 months to be funded partly through $60,000 from the ACP Partnership Grant and up to $60,000 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, do you have a question?
Your Worship, at the right time, I'll be prepared to move the motion, and I'll explain why then.
Okay, are there any questions? Councillor Kelly, just a second here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeremy. Two questions. First question is, for the prospective intern, what skill set would they already have under their belt?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, so with the assistance from the ACP program itself, they select graduates, which would be university graduates, probably with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, with a major in accounting. That's most likely what they would come equipped, or an equivalent in a college or thereabouts. But I would say a Bachelor's of Commerce degree would be most likely what we'd be looking at.
Is it possible for the city, through the CPA organization, to train students? And I know that's changed since my time with the organization, but I don't know what the current rules are.
Through your worship, to Councillor Kelly, mine as well. I don't think the city would qualify under the basically the articling program is what you're referring to. We'd have to look at that. I don't know if they necessarily have the auditing experience they would gain by that.
And I don't even know if that's necessary now. It's changed. Okay, thank you. One very simple question. The budget is for 18 months, $113,000 for essentially salary costs. And the recommendation in the material provided, and this might be dated, I don't know, is about $82,000 or $83,000 for the 18-month period. And I'm just wondering why we would budget significantly higher than the recommended.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I did ask that very question myself, and I did confirm with our payroll department today, actually. I think those ranges are outdated, and they, of course, do not include benefits as well. But I did confirm the pay grade level with the city employee, our payroll staff, to ensure that it would be an entry-level position, plus we added 15% for the employer share of benefits on top of that, which brought us up slightly higher than those ranges.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There doesn't appear to be any additional questions. So, Councillor Harris, if you'd like to put the motion on. Go ahead.
I would move that Council direct administration to apply to host a finance officer intern for 18 months to be funded with $60,000 from the Alberta Community Partnership Grant, Municipal Internship Program, and up to $60,000 from the Financial Stabilization and Contingency Reserve.
Thank you. I'll accept that motion. Would you like to speak in favor?
I would. I am a testimony to the outcome of the internship program. It started in 1980 as an initiative of Alberta Municipal Affairs, and when I graduated from the University of Alberta with my degree in political science and business, I saw an advertisement at the University of Lethbridge for a municipal intern, one of, I think, 12 or so at that time in 1981, to work in the town of Taber. And I lived in Lethbridge, and so I applied for the program, and I got the job. And so I drove from Lethbridge to Taber every day for a year. It was a 12-month posting at that point in time. And it was a more general program at that time. So in the second intake in the intern program, I got to work in every department in the town. And at that time, it was about 5,000 population. And it was a great hands-on learning experience, and ultimately I made the decision to stay in municipal government. I subsequently, after the intern program, got offered a job in the finance department in Strathcona County. And then I spent about 10 years in Strathcona County, and then and here I am today. So I'm a testimony to the intern program. I think that our organization has the critical mass to be able to demonstrate and to help a new graduate from a recognized post-secondary institution, probably in the accounting stream, to get excellent experience. I think our finance department has some very, very motivated and qualified people, and they have good working experience in municipal government, municipal finance, and I think that in itself would be a really good background for any intern coming into our organization. I support the program. I think it would be definitely a good opportunity for both the intern and for the city. The types of programs that projects that I worked on were fabulous, and it ultimately has been a good legacy for many graduates. The program was stalled during the Klein era for about 4 or 5 years, but it has subsequently been reinstituted, and they have been injecting new recruits and graduates into municipal administration. And there are a lot of people retiring from the field over the next 3 to 5 years. So new blood in the organization is definitely a very positive thing, in my opinion. So with that, I would definitely support the motion.
Okay, thank you. The motion is open for discussion and debate. Not seeing, Councillor Kelly.
Councillor Harris, I support your motion. I think the program itself is very valuable. I believe so strongly in approaches like this that I think we should take full advantage of every opportunity we have to have interns within our organization at whatever level that might be. So let's keep on it. Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. There doesn't appear to be any additional questions or debate. So Councillor Harris on close.
Nothing more. I think enough's been said.
Okay.
I think enough has been said.
All right, thank you. So I will close the motion on the municipal partnership. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, the next item that we have is Code of Conduct. Brenda Moulter presenting.
Your Worship and members of Council, Bylaw C-18-22 is presented at today's meeting to highlight and discuss proposed changes to the bylaw and to request that 3 readings be approved. The current Council Code of Conduct Bylaw C-27-18 was adopted in November 2018. As a requirement of the bylaw, the Code of Conduct is to be presented for review following a new term of council. Administration conducted a review of the bylaw, and a draft document was presented to the members at the April 19th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Feedback from that meeting was reviewed and incorporated into the draft as appropriate. For your reference, a track changes version of the bylaw has been included as Appendix A. Appendix B is the proposed bylaw without the track changes, and Appendix C is a copy of the current bylaw. Highlights of the changes include removal of Section 19.4.4, which was for the appointment of the chief elected official. This section was not applicable to the city, but rather to a summer village or municipal district. Removal of Section 19.4.8 was related to the reduction or suspension of remuneration, and this reference to the provision was removed from the MGA, therefore removed from the bylaw. Section 5.6 is for instances when elected officials are asked to speak at public events. This information was added following the discussion at the Committee of the Whole meeting to provide clarity. Within the document, the reference of councillor was changed to member. This is for consistency with other city documents. 2 sections were added to the council and administration communication protocol for the references to economic development matters, as well as for proclamations. Otherwise, it was wording and routine formatting amendments were completed to provide increased clarity and consistency. That is my presentation, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so I'll open it up if there's any questions. Councillor Harris.
Have we ever considered the appointment of an integrity commissioner that would ultimately then be assigned the responsibility to interpret things within the Code of Conduct?
Your Worship, to Councillor Harris, that has not been discussed. At this point, it is in Council's hands to determine whether to investigate internally or to have an external party investigate matters.
Yeah, okay. So a discussion during budget, for example, could be something that we might put on the table. Is that?
Definitely, that could take place then or through strategic planning. It could be something that is discussed.
Yeah, I don't have any general questions about this one. I just was curious about that because it is an adjunct to a Code of Conduct.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Brenda. I want to get to 5.6. You indicated that that was added resulting from the Committee of the Whole meeting. I don't recall that discussion. So has it been a problem in the past?
Through your Worship to Councillor Kelly, I believe you were absent for that Committee of the Whole meeting. It was a question that was brought up, I believe, from Councillor Abitoye, who had attended or had been asked to speak at a public event. And there was just some comment and discussion regarding when is it appropriate to speak on behalf of the individual or on behalf of council. So it was put in there for that purpose.
Okay. Who makes the determination whether the request is to hear the city's perspective or that of the individual? Who makes that determination?
Through to Councillor Kelly, I would think that that would be based on a case-by-case basis. First of all, the request that goes in to the individual, and that individual then needs to determine, is this something that they want the city's perspective, or is it the individual council member's perspective? So perhaps through discussion with the mayor to find out, maybe hash that out a bit.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on if I have time. I don't see anybody lined up behind me to speak. I had a question revolving Section 10, revolving a series of questions on that. 10 is conflicts of interest. It's my understanding that the phrase conflict of interest does not arise within the Municipal Government Act, and I've certainly never found it. Am I correct?
Your Worship, to Councillor Kelly, I believe the Municipal Government Act tends to reference pecuniary interest. When we did get legal advice, the common language is conflict of interest.
Well, goodness knows I'm not a lawyer. What is a conflict of interest, because it's not defined within our own proposed bylaw as well?
I'll need to just do a little bit of thinking on that. In the past, we have not had instances where we have had situations like this, conflicts. So that would be something that we'd have to work through as we work with the bylaw.
Well, it's section 170, bracket 1 of the Municipal Government Act that talks about pecuniary interest, and it's a rather lengthy and exhaustive section. I don't understand the benefit to this council of referencing something that we can't define, that isn't found in the Municipal Government Act, and in fact is outside the Municipal Government Act. How does this, where's the benefit to council on that?
Well, as far as pecuniary interest, it's typically monetary benefits. This one could be, from a personal belief, something other than monetary.
I'll leave it alone for now. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate your comments. Mayor Katcher, let me ponder on this a minute, and I'll ring in again if I find it necessary.
Mr. Fleming had his light on. Go
ahead. Through your worship, you are correct about the MGA. It doesn't reference conflict of interest. Council does have the ability within its own code of conduct to set higher or different standards than those that are in the MGA. I mean, really, the intent here, and when I read this, we don't go much further than the pecuniary interest. I noticed in 10.2, we talk about financial or other benefits for themselves, family, friends, and whatnot. So our definition of conflict of interest is it's pretty close to pecuniary interest, but we do have the ability to set parameters in place that are above and beyond the MGA. And I think really that's what we're doing here, although I would argue we really haven't gone that much further. So
go ahead.
Thank you. I know we have the ability, and in fact, I would support that, but we haven't done anything except introduce a phrase without definition, which means it's really not usable in my mind. So I'll leave it at that. Let's get to the comments later. And I hit you. I say that so that you can prep yourself for the next section of the meeting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So clarifying questions, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation, Brenda. And I just want to come back to the 5.6 clause that has been inserted into this bylaw. I think it's irrelevant because if an organization or someone approaches one of us as council members, they're aware that we have a mayor, so they could have gone to the mayor. So if they came to me or some other council member to say, okay, would you like to do a presentation at our event? Then it's up to that council member to decide whether or not they want to go and not go to the mayor to ask for permission. And so I really question this this clause, and I'm pretty sure that in other municipal code of conduct bylaws, there's nothing like this in existence. So and that's a question for you, Ms. Malta. So is this a clause that you would generally see in other municipal bylaws?
Your Worship, to Councillor Abatoye, this is a new provision, and it was based on that discussion. It is certainly up to council. If you don't feel that it provides the value that you were looking for, then it can be removed. It was more to respond to the discussion that was at the Committee of the Whole.
Yeah, but it says a determination must be made. It's kind of it's not a may, it's a must. And that means that it has to be done. Right. And so again, like I said, I think it's irrelevant. I'll make a motion to remove the 5.6 clause.
Okay, we're not there yet. There's no motion on the floor.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just an FYI.
Okay. Okay, further questions? Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you again. On 10.2, members are to be free from undue influence and to not act, and this is the question, or appear to act. What does the appear to act actually mean? How would I know that?
To your worship, to Councillor Kelly, again, this would be a personal decision. This document is for the seven of you to make those decisions.
I thank you for that, except it is a city bylaw, and I would support that as well, if we could define what appear to act is. And anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Brenda.
Okay, thank you. There doesn't appear to be any other questions. Would somebody like to put a motion on? Go ahead, Councillor Blissert. Oh. I can make the motion. Okay, just a second. Go ahead, Councillor Nguyen.
Right now. So I'll make the motion that council give first reading to the Council Code of Conduct Bylaw C18-22.
All right, for first reading, would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Yeah, sure, I can. I agree with Brenda that we had some very wholesome discussion during the committee of the whole meeting, which I think helped to clarify this document, its intention, purpose, and some of the wording in it as well. I think it's well written. It's a collaborative a code that will be a bylaw, which has required the input from this council. It's requirement under the MGA. I'm okay with from my understanding of this document and how I read it with supporting the motion and as it stands.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so the motion is on for first reading. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris?
Question for Ms. Moulter. So my question about an integrity commissioner, would that be an individual, I guess to Councillor Kelly's point, you're looking for an interpretation of what this means. It's not laid out in legislation or in statute and whatnot, but it's probably just common law kind of stuff. And what does that really mean? Would an integrity commissioner, or who would a councillor go to and Councillor Abatoye made a comment about 5.6, to determine whether or not this is something that's reasonable or not, or might put you in jeopardy of breaching the code of conduct? Is that what the role of that type of an individual or resource would be, or how would we actually do that in the absence of a definition?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, yes, I believe that would be the role of an integrity commissioner, to really have the hands-on knowledge and work with council on this document and the interpretation.
So both interpretive and adjudicatory.
It depends on what you want. I mean, we have this listed as an investigator. So should there be a matter where there is a conflict and council decided that they did not want to handle that internally, then it would go to an investigator. So should there become a time where there is that role, those details would need to be figured out at that time.
Okay, well, respecting the conversation that's been going on this particular bylaw change and that sort of stuff, that's maybe something we need to put on the docket and have some sort of a conversation about it in due course. But I can support the motion, and I think this is an evolving kind of document by and large, and we have to police ourselves and try to make appropriate decisions. Is that a fair assessment?
Correct. And as the document gets used, and you have situations where you do work through the complaint process, it's a living document that may need changes as it goes on.
Okay, and I guess over time, municipal affairs may or may not provide greater specificity in relation to some things that may create problems in various municipalities from time to time.
Correct, and actually, the municipal affairs did provide that input on the conflict of interest section. So.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Question of protocol or procedure. I want to move or have a motion made to remove a couple sections of this proposed bylaw. It's my belief I should be able to do that by amending the motion and have it read as amended by deleting paragraph 10.2. Mayor Catcher, is that acceptable?
Okay, I'm just going to go to parliamentary because, as I've understood before, with land use and other ones, we typically give it first reading first, and then there's actually a first reading, and then it's amended at second. So, correct. Parliamentary?
Yes, that is how the city has followed with our bylaw processes.
Okay. So we would do the first reading, and then once first reading is provided, a motion would come on for second, and then it would be amended. The motions to remove anything would be done at that point in time.
Okay, thank you. Then, and I can do that, thank you. I have another question, though, of Ms. Moulter. It relates to 9.4. What information have I had in the last 5 years that is generally considered to be of confidential nature?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, typically it would be anything that's discussed in camera.
But we have a rule for that, do we not? There's a separate section that talks about that.
Through FOIP, the FOIP Act is, yes.
Correct. So I get the FOIP part. I think that's made clear in here. This is over and above. Is there anything over and above that might generally be considered?
Confidential?
Yeah.
Anything that you've had throughout the time of your being on council, whether that, maybe you individual council members get confidential information individually, like either way, you could come across confidential information through other means. I'm not sure what individual council members have through your boards and committees or through conversations with.
Well, I think it's important, and I understand Councillor Harris's comment that it's an evolving document. Of course it is. That doesn't mean we can't try to evolve it today or tonight as far as we deem necessary. So I want to read the sentence. Confidential information includes, and I'm going to skip a part, other legislation or any information that pertains to the business of the city and is generally considered to be of a confidential nature. Generally considered by whom? Like, generally considered means most of us agree. But without a statement to the effect that most of us agree, there is no generally considered.
Through to your worship to Councillor Kelly, this is an individual, this actually is for individual members as well. So what you would maybe have as confidential information could be different than other members through your boards and committees, or through, should you meet with a group and you've got confidential information from that might be different than what Mayor Catcher has. It's an individual document for that purpose.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. I'm still struggling with it, but thank you for your response.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batoye.
I'm going to wait for the second motion to put in my amending motion. Thank you.
Okay, so we will deal with first reading to get that on the books, and then as we go into second reading, we'll take any amendments that there are at that point in time. So, Councillor Nguyen, anything further on first reading?
Nothing further on first reading.
Okay, so I'll close the motion that council give first reading to the Council Code of Conduct bylaw. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. You can continue a second.
So I move that council give second reading to, oops. Not right yet.
I didn't think I took you off. Go ahead.
I move that council give second reading to the Council Code of Conduct Bylaw C18-22.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on speaking in favor?
Yeah, just that I think we've had some good discussion here, and there's been some concerns that are raised, like regardless of my comfortability with this document and supporting the original motion, the Code of Conduct as it is read, I will consider supporting my peers here and reevaluating some sections in their wording, given that this is a document that we have to be all in agreement to. So that's all for now.
Okay, thank you. On discussion and debate, Councillor Harris.
In preparing the original bylaw and the subsequent bylaw, did we do much in the way of research as to what other municipalities in our region have by way of wording?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, yes, we did. But primarily we did use a template that was provided by Alberta Municipal Affairs, AUMA, and it had legal involved in it, and it drafted it. And a lot of municipalities used a very similar template, and that is what this was based on.
So the wording in this document is fairly common. It was recommended by the Municipal Affairs and Alberta municipalities, I guess, whatever they're called. So ultimately, it has been vetted from that standpoint, and there's a high level of comfort with it, unless somebody has concerns such as Councillor Abatoy or Councillor Kelly has indicated their concerns, and then we deal with it individually. That is correct. The process.
It's primarily as it was presented with the few modifications to customize it to the city.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So I know there's a couple amending motions. Councillor Kelly, you were first.
Thank you, Mayor Catcher. I'd like to proceed through this thing in an orderly fashion. I think Councillor Abatoy wants to address 5.6. And if you would, please let her speak first, and then I'll take over or make my motion after that.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Abatoy. You can put your amending motion on.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So my amending motion is to delete 5.6.
To remove 5.6. Okay. That council delete 5.6 from the bylaw. So Jennifer will type that up. So while she's typing it up, so you can just speak to your amendment.
So as I said before, I think it's overly prescriptive and too subjective. This document is supposed to be a code of conduct for all of council, and I think that this is very restrictive. I don't think that's the purpose of being on council. Like Brenda said, it's not something that we find in other bylaws. So why do we have it here? And I think, like, I don't want to have to tell stories or anything like that, but I think that it's really not advantageous for to us as a council that we have this clause here. We do have the mayor as the head of council, and I'm pretty sure that everybody's aware of that. And if individual council members are being approached to speak or whatever, do a presentation, whatever, they are aware that there is a mayor, right? And they could have gone there. And I think out of respect is also necessary for council members to, let the mayor know that, okay, I've been invited for this event. But it's also important that the mayor is respectful as well to other council members if she's been approached by those kinds of information. But I think that this is something that can be handled outside of the bylaw. I don't think it's necessary to be too overly prescriptive in the bylaw. So for that reason, I think that this clause should be deleted from the bylaw.
Okay, so I've accepted the motion. It's been spoken in favor. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Kelly?
Yes, thank you. I simply want to say that I would support this motion. I think our bylaw already, we have a document somewhere that indicates very strongly that the mayor of council gives and states the city's position on subject matter. And I'm not sure that we need to police that with this particular bylaw. I think it should behoove all of us to understand our role in the organization, and that if we're speaking, that we would appropriately couch our words. And I find it something like 5.6 to it almost cast dispersion on my ability as a counselor. So I'll leave it at that, and I support getting rid of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
On the other hand, I don't have a problem with the wording as it currently stands. If I got asked to speak at some event, I'd obviously follow through to find out what they want a presentation on. And if it was something relative to a council position, then ultimately this would specify have a chat with the mayor, have a chat with the city manager, ultimately determine how best to make the best presentation. And if it is just they want to know what I think as Councillor Gordon Harris, then I would obviously then feel free to make a presentation in that regard. So I don't have any problem with it. I mean, we can just go over every one of these clauses. Quite frankly, I think it's fine, and I can live with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to support the motion. It was injected into this because of the conversation that we did have. And yes, through George Cuff and through everybody else, it talks about, who is, the primary speaker at these events. Some organizations just choose, to bypass. And at the end of the day, I guess that's their choice. But I think it's really important, we talk about protocols in council, and if there's any event coming up, even as the mayor, if it's a ribbon cutting, a proclamation, anything, there is a request that comes through the office, and then of course it's determined who's going to do it, and if the mayor can't do it, then the deputy mayor, and so on and so forth. So there are protocols about who's going to take each step for these. If it's somebody asking for something to come and talk personally about how they act or how they like council, I think that's, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I think if it's ribbon cuttings, if it's something that specifically deals with the city as an organization, I do believe that, there are protocols, and it's worth the discussion. So I'm quite comfortable with the wording that is in here. And, I think it just helps with that clarity, because it makes it even more uncomfortable when somebody's gone out and done it, and then you have to deal with it after the fact. So I'm comfortable with this wording. Councillor Kelly?
I'm just going to come back to the questions I had before the motion, and I'd like to understand better. Was the meeting when this initial discussion happened part of orientation shortly after the election, or did I miss something?
No, Your Worship, to Councillor Kelly, it was April 19th, and I believe you were away.
I think I was. Thank you. Okay. Unfortunately, no. Who makes, it says here, in each instance, a determination must be made whether the request is to hear the city's perspective or that of the individual member. Who makes that determination? The individual member?
Your Worship, to Councillor Kelly, when that individual member receives a request to speak, then they would be the one to make that determination based on the information that has been given to them from the organization. Again, as Councillor Harris said, do they want, that individual's perspective, or do they want a council perspective for whatever the matter is? It's up to that individual member to make that determination.
Is there some reason why we couldn't have stated it that way, that the member must make a determination?
And that amendment can be done. This is council's document, and it's up to council to make it read how they wish.
Thank you. I still support I think, getting rid of 5.6, but if that motion fails, I'll be making a subsequent motion on 5.6. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye on close.
So let me be clear. I'm not saying that we should break protocol. It's very clear that the mayor is the spokesperson for council. What I'm saying is that this clause is irrelevant. We don't need it in our bylaws. It is too prescriptive, and that is not what our bylaws are meant for. And so for that reason, I really would like to see this clause deleted because honestly, like Councillor Kelly said, it's an insult to all of us as council members that this clause is even in our bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So you're only voting on the amendment, and the amendment is to remove 5.6 from bylaw C18-22. Please cast your vote. Motion is defeated. Do you have any other amending motions? I'm just finishing up with Councillor Abatoye first.
I have none.
Okay, thank you. Then I will go to Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. It would help my appreciation.
Oh, sorry. Jeez. Sorry.
Thank you. It would help my understanding, and maybe even I could appreciate a little bit the need for this section if the wording was changed. So I would suggest and move this, that following the comma, so the phrase in each instance, comma, the member must make a determination as to whether the request is to hear. So I want to, and that's my motion. The member must make a determination. And there might be some minor editorial changes to that, but that's the motion.
Okay. So after the
comma, after the word instance.
In the second sentence.
In the second sentence, yes.
In each instance, and then just add the word the member.
The member must make a determination and then adjust it editorially subsequent to that to
okay, so basically he's asking for the word the member must make.
That's exactly what I asked for, yes, thank you.
So he's moving to add the words the member must make in between the comma and a determination.
And then remove must be made. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely, yes, thank you.
Okay. Are you okay with that too?
Are you okay?
I think Jennifer just needs a moment.
Okay, that's fine. Do you wish to speak in favor of that, or?
Well, I do. I think where I really stumbled with this 5.6 is the requirement for determination. And without the method being elucidated or stated, then it becomes very vague as to who makes a determination. So if a councillor gets a request, is it then up to another council member to make the determination and then pass it through? I don't think that makes any sense. I don't think this has ever been a problem either in my 5 years, so we're beating it up for nothing. But it is a bylaw. I'd like the bylaw to be meaningful, I'd like it to be understandable, and I'd like it to be enforceable. So, and this is, for example, and this has never happened, if Councillor Kelly gets asked to speak to an organization in the community. I know, number one, they're inviting me. Number two, yes, what is it you want me to talk about? Number three, I'm good to roll. And what's the determination? Not vague, not left open as to what the determination shall be. I make the determination because I was the one invited. That's the intent.
Okay, thank you. So she's going to work on the wording. We'll talk. The amending motion is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly, for that amendment. Actually, I think it puts things a bit more into perspective. That will obviously be my second option, considering that the deletion wasn't approved. I think it absolutely makes sense, and I absolutely support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris on the amendment.
You know, I hate wordsmithing documents like this in a council meeting. It's a waste of time. Because when I look at this, I look at the literal meaning. A determination must be made whether the request is to hear the city's perspective or that of the individual member. You know what? I would make a determination of my own right, and if you guys want to challenge it or the public wants to challenge it, let them go. But it's a literal interpretation, and I'm comfortable with that. But I really hate doing edits to a bylaw on the fly in a council meeting. I find that just uncomfortable because we don't really understand the whole concept, and we're thinking on the fly on these things, and we're coming up with this wording, you know, made in somewhere wording. I'm not comfortable with it, so I won't support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon on the amending motion.
Thank you. I'm actually pretty comfortable making these edits just because it helps for clarity and it makes us be able to use the document usable. And thank you, Councillor Kelly. I will support the wording. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard on the amending motion.
I guess this document prevents issues or helps us deal with issues when they come up, right? That's the intent of it. And they do come up here and there. So it is good to have this, and we are legislated to have it. I'm okay with actually changing it because when else can we change it other than waiting for another year? I mean, you know, if we read it through, if this gives a counselor or some clarity, I guess these few words added are okay with me. I'll support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Noyen.
Yeah, thanks. I'll support this motion. I think adding those words it gives some clarity and a little bit or takes away the subjectivity of 5.6 in a way. Regardless of that, I think 5.6 in itself can be interpreted in quite a few different ways. So hopefully this helps to get us all on the same page.
Okay, thank you. I can support the motion too. I agree with Councillor Harris. So when you're wordsmithing these things, we'll probably have this bylaw back in front of us in a few months because the wording will be wrong in it or incorrect. But I think it still has the same intent because it says still has to make the determination whether the request is to hear the city's perspective or that of the individual member. And I think that's the key part, is determining if you're doing it on behalf of the city or you're doing it on your own behalf. So I think as long as everybody understands that's the intent of that motion, I can accept that. And it's not about just going out and asking yourself to get invited to a bunch of things and forgetting about the rest of council. And I think that's really what this is about. It's about saying we're a council as a whole. When you're requested to speak, maybe the rest of council needs to be there as well. And we need to determine who you're representing at that time. But the amendment, to me, it's minor, so I'm fine with that. Councillor Kelly on close on the amendment.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, so you're, oh shoot, go ahead.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, so this is only voting on the amendment to add the member must make the determination and deleting must be made. So only on that. Please cast your vote. Okay, that is carried 6-1. Councillor Kelly, did you have a further one? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just give me a second to scroll down here. I'm going to refer council again to section 10, conflicts of interest. There's two things I'd like to do. I would like to, and I'm just going to introduce them to put them hopefully a little bit better into context. Number one, I think section 10 should be called pecuniary interest. And I think also, to be consistent with the Municipal Government Act, and because this bylaw does not discuss what a conflict of interest is or could be, and it would be very difficult to, and furthermore, the Municipal Government Act has chose not to talk about conflict of interest, I'm sure for all of the above reasons, that be called, section 10 be called pecuniary interest, and then that section 10.2 in its entirety be removed. And because it becomes redundant. 10.1 describes the rules that we all must live by under Part 5 Division 6, which is Section 170 brackets 1.
Okay, so we'll get to the motion, amending motion first. So,
yeah, you bet. Thank you.
So the amending motion would be...
Amending motion is two parts then, and that they're related, so you can deal with them together or not as you see fit.
We'll deal with them separately.
Okay, then let's move to change the heading from conflicts of interest to section 10 to read pecuniary interest.
Okay, so the motion is that Bylaw C 18-22 be amended for section 10 from conflicts of interest to pecuniary interest. Okay, so we'll deal with that one first.
Thank you.
You may speak in favor of it.
You bet, thank you. I would like for there to be a section on conflict of interest. I think all of us probably would be very comfortable with that. It's just not possible. It's impossible to describe it. It's impossible, if you can't describe it, to enforce it. And if you can't describe it and you can't enforce it, then we're left up to ourselves to be our own judge and jury, and I think all of us do a very good job of that. I note also that conflict of interest or conflicts of interest does not exist within the Municipal Government Act. And if it was deemed important, I wonder why they left it out. And I suspect they left it out for the very same reasons that I'm struggling with it right now. It's not possible to define, and it's not possible, therefore, to enforce. So with that having being said, I welcome any comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are only discussing the amendment on the title change of conflicts of interest. I can go first on discussion and debate. I won't support the change of this. I believe over the number of years that I've sat on council, and I know they pretty well do tie to pecuniary interest, but there has been other areas that there has been conflicts of interest with members of municipality, with members, and so 10.4, when we talk about it, that one really talks about the legal advice of the member, and it may not be specifically to pecuniary interest. It may be to something else. And at this point in time, I don't want to go into it because it would almost be name calling at this point in time. So I think conflict of interest is still probably the right wording for that. So I'll just leave it with that. Councillor Harris on discussion and debate.
So I looked up the definition of conflict of interest, and it reads, and again, it's a Google search, a term used to describe the situation in which a public official or fiduciary who, contrary to the obligation, absolute duty to act for the benefit of the public or a designated individual, exploits the relationship for personal benefit, typically pecuniary. So, you know, I think that there's probably enough definition that ultimately would draw benefit to the way conflict of interest as a title is listed here. And again, we've been told that Municipal Affairs ultimately provided this template and Alberta Municipality sanctioned the template, and I'm comfortable with the template.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon on discussion and debate of the amending motion.
Yeah, so I would actually be more in favor of keeping conflicts of interest in there because I don't think that all conflicts are pecuniary in nature. And so I really don't see the point of taking it out. But also, I would actually support a definition of conflicts of interest being in because you're right. We need to be able to define what that is. I believe what Councillor Harris provided as a definition is exactly what I thought it to be. So I would support putting in a definition of conflict of interest, but I do believe that pecuniary and other conflicts do exist under this heading. That's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen on discussion and debate on the amendment.
Yeah, just as we're tackling section 10, the current motion to change the title to pecuniary interest doesn't relate at all, I believe, to the section 10.3. Members shall approach decision making with an open mind that is capable of persuasion. There's nothing in that section that reads to me or relates to specifically to pecuniary. So I don't know, potentially this entire section is under review as it relates to conflicts and pecuniary. And once again, we could pick this apart quite elaborately. I'm fine with how the wording reads, and I think I read this more as advice of how we should be thinking about our roles instead of trying to get the exact wording to govern our thought patterns and actions during term of office. So that's just my opinion on it.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Your Worship, Madam Mayor, can I refer this back to administration with a listing of all of our concerns and that this come back at a subsequent time, hopefully with appropriate insight and input from administration relative to the things that we would like to see?
So, no, I believe we can only have one amending motion or one motion on the floor, so we have to deal with the motion that's on the floor.
Your Worship, I would need to consult the procedures bylaw, but I believe when a motion to refer is made, it is addressed at that point.
Thank you. I move that we refer this back to administration because it's an important document. We are making cogent comments. I don't disagree with
just
it.
Point of order. Well, I just point of order while I make sure that I've got the proper ruling on that. So I'd just like to make sure I have the proper ruling, please.
Yes.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess. It's 4:52, so 4:57.
Yeah, make it worthwhile.
Make it 5 o'clock. We'll recess till 5 o'clock so we can get the rate.
I love 7-minute breaks.
Till 5 o'clock.
But then if you do a motion to refer, everything just kind of stays there and it will come back. But I don't have all my documents here with me, so.
Says you can do a referral. It doesn't prevent the motion to be made as being considered.
I think a referral, though, you at that point, you're basically stopping what you're doing and referring it back to administration with direction of what we need to do with it. Yeah, my concern is we have a main motion and an
Okay, we are going to resume the meeting. So I have consulted with Ledge Services, and so I will not accept Councillor Harris's motion at this time, as it would only deal with the amending motion, and it's my understanding that he chooses maybe to refer the entire document back, so we will go through a process. So Councillor
Your
Kelly.
Worship, can I just, sorry to interrupt you, there is another alternative. It depends if there are many other amendments. If there is the one amendment which Councillor Kelly stated, and just one more, then maybe we can capture this. If there's additional changes beyond that, then perhaps it needs to be referred back to us.
Okay, so as a chair, I'm going to ask, so we have the one amending motion on the floor right now to, that's to change the title. I think we're in the title change. How many additional amendments would you have?
I would like to wordsmiths.
How many amendments would you have?
At least 2.
So I'm going to look to council if there's...
Mayor Catcher, I'm comfortable withdrawing the motion, my amending motion, in anticipation of the referral. And then we can speak on the referral motion, let administration know what our concerns are, and progress from there.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you choose to withdraw your motion?
I do.
All right, thank you. Then I'll go to Councillor Harris for a referral motion. You have to push your button.
I would move that Council refer bylaw C18-22 to administration to consider the observations of individual members of council.
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
Okay, so what do you want? Just refer it to administration? Have fun.
You're through to Councillor Harris. If we could identify what kinds of changes we're looking for, that will help us when we come back to know what you would like.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Okay, so I guess the question, do you want this to come back to a committee of the whole, or do you just want, as part of the referral, for each person to suggest, but because there would not be a vote or consensus, then it would be just taken as information and put in as an alternative?
Yes, if we could get an idea of what the changes are proposed, we could put those as alternatives and it could come back to a council meeting instead of delaying it and going to a committee of the whole, unless there is a great deal of discussion that is anticipated.
And I'm trying to expedite this thing, but still give individual members of council the opportunity to make the suggestion of things they'd like to see by way of changes and do it in an appropriate manner.
Okay, and we're trying to get to that appropriate manner. So referral motion of bylaw C18-22 to administration. When would you like to see it come back? We need that included in the motion. And then we need to, so Councillor Harris.
Well, time is not of the essence of this that I can tell. So I would suggest that within 2 months.
So
or
would
sooner.
the October committee of the whole suffice?
No, I don't want to see it go to the committee of the whole. I want it to come back to council.
So perhaps we could say by the end of the year, end of December,
By the end of the
December.
Okay, by the fourth
meeting.
quarter.
Yeah.
Okay, referral motion
Okay.
to Q4. Okay, you can speak to your motion.
I think we've spoken enough.
Okay, the referral motion is debatable, so on debate. So this will come back. So if approved, it would come back to administration. So parliamentary, I think you're wrong, because a referral motion, you can only speak to the referral. You can't provide a whole bunch of additional.
There is a point where you can speak to the content. We need instructions as to why it's being referred.
Okay, So I will open that for discussion and debate. So it's on the referral motion. So what I'm being told, though, is that you can provide feedback.
Clarification on the instructions of what is being referred. What do you want to see?
Okay, and I guess my concern on that is it's not the mover that's providing the clarification.
That's correct. It would be through debate.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do it as debate then on the referral. Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I will speak to the referral motion. We're sending this back to, I would like to see it go back to administration so that they can wordsmith this a little bit, perhaps provide alternative wording so that council can pick and choose a little bit, cut and paste something that works. Council has heard my concerns on section 10, and I'm sure administration has as well, so I won't belabor that anymore. I would like to go to section 9.4. I struggle still with the phrasing in the 5th line in the paragraph that says is generally considered. I struggle with that. I don't know what generally considered is. I also have a concern or a question because that sentence goes on and it says, including but not limited to information concerning a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land or other property. Is that a standard phrasing within FOIP, Mr. Fleming?
To your worship, again, all of this wording came from the AUMA template that we adopted in 2018. So,
and yeah, thank you. I understand completely why, in many circumstances, the acquisition or disposition of land or other property would need to be confidential. I absolutely get that. But I also understand that council ought to operate in an open and transparent fashion. So that, given that, and I do think that's the overarching mandate of council, to be open and transparent. So for a land transaction to be considered confidential, I think it's incumbent upon somebody, and I guess that would be you, Mr. Fleming, or administration, to indicate to council why this particular discussion needs to be confidential. Because certainly if we were talking about disposing of a square foot piece of land on the river valley so somebody could put up a cross or something silly like that, we wouldn't have to have that conversation in camera. So a blanket ruling saying all real estate will be in camera, I struggle with. I really do. Okay. And I hearken back to the last discussion council had on
Okay,
on
I'm going to go to Mr. Fleming for an answer.
Yeah, to your worship, I think that's a good point, because with all land sales, there's a point where they are considered in camera, and then there becomes a point in time when they are it would no longer be considered confidential. The circumstances tend to vary depending on the nature of the situation, but perhaps we could add something to that, simply that just says, a land acquisition that is not yet deemed, or that is deemed as confidential, by council and or administration or something like that. Like, just so it's clear, like, if it's still in a confidential stage, then it applies here. But if it's no longer in the confidential stage, this no longer applies.
Well, maybe we could decide when that state starts and ends is really the point.
We could try that. Like I said, it varies depending on the circumstance in my experience, because there are the little ones like you talked about where I don't know that there ever needs to be a point. But then as they tend to get bigger in size and complexity, when they involve the business interests of a third party.
Okay, and I would prefer not to be debating each one of these. They're looking for information and feedback at this point in time.
I think I understand the nature of the concern, though, and I think we can look at wording to help clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. I think that covers it for now. Thank you.
So those are the only items that you have?
I see no other person anxious to speak. Just let me roll through here for voice scribbles.
Pardon? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Bear with me for 1 second while I just confirm that those are my only questions. I was giving up the mic for other councillors, but I see there are none, so bear with me for a second, please. Mayor Catcher, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are still on discussion and debate of the referral motion. For myself, I'm sitting here going, you know, a referral motion, we need to have clarity on it. I mean, we did review this. Unfortunately, one member of council wasn't at the committee of the whole when this came forward. My only concern with this is with the items being presented, how administration takes it away and how you're going to bring it back, because you don't know if there's consensus for change, you know, if it's supported or not. So I guess how do you take this away for these items, and then how do you bring it back? So not knowing.
Your Worship, what we can do is, based on the information that's been given, we can provide alternatives, and should those alternatives be chosen, then they would be voted on by council.
So then when you brought it back, then you would bring, like, in that section, option A, option B, and then we would be choosing basically a la carte?
I would think that's probably how it's going to, once we get into the document and look at those sections to see if there is additional wording changes needed, then yeah, we would bring options back for that.
Okay, so all right, Councillor Harris, on close on your referral.
Well, the direction that I'm trying to get to is the fact that the comments that Councillor Kelly have been made tonight would suggest to me that there is probably an alternative wording or two, but I don't want to see a report coming back, well, you could do this or you could do that. Let's, in response to the observation of the concerns, we've reviewed it, and here's what we're recommending. Leave it as it was, or here's the change. It's one or the other. Leave it as it is or make a change. And so administration would then have the latitude to make the adjustment to address the concern of the member of council.
Your Worship, to council.
I know I said that's closed, but I need to go back to Ms. Moulter, because that's not what was indicated. We need to have clear direction on what's going to come back. So, Councillor Harris, just because you're indicating they make their decision, they come back, so they could come back and say no changes. So I just need clarity, because I believe that this would have come back with options.
Your Worship, that is, from my understanding, we've got the information that's been the concerns that were made, and we'll look to see how they could possibly be incorporated or replaced. That will be presented to council, and you will vote on what the preference is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, did you have something?
Probably not now. You indicated you're bringing back alternatives.
Correct.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Harris, I took over your close, but do you have anything further? Okay, so you're only voting on the referral motion. Please cast your vote. Okay, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any notice of motions? Not seeing any. Are there any points of interest? Are there any councillor inquiries? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. I might be wrong, Mr. Fleming. I'm to be trusting my recollection or memory here. The study on neighborhood revitalization, I've anticipated sometime around the end of the summer. Yes or no? Am I right or wrong there?
Through your worship, I might have that here somewhere. Yes. Oh, there it is. Sorry. What I've got is coming back by the end of Q1 in 2023. So by the end of March.
By the end of March coming up.
That's
Okay, I jumped ahead half a year. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no additional inquiries, actually, she hasn't put one on yet today. Oh, has she? Okay, go ahead then, Councillor Blizzard. Sorry.
I make a motion to go in camera.
All right, thank you. Please cast your vote.
I vote in favor.
All right, so we are in camera. Thank you.
Yeah, just the minutes. As big as this one.